Yeah, that's how slow and behind computers. I touched that thing about a minute ago. Kevin Hawkins, what's happening? Kristen Melinda, Ann from Mass, Caroline in Canada. Good to see you, folks. We're dicey on the signal. Johnny, how are you, bud?
Couldn't be.
It was a heck of a day.
Boy, was it.
Got to see you. See that? It's going to be in and out, folks, but we're going to hang with it. We're going to see how much of this we can get through, and if it doesn't work, then it wasn't meant to.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let it get to me. I know it's not going to get to my brother because he's already been through this, what, twice today?
Yeah.
Twice. Not once, but twice. Lumen, good to see you. Lost again. How are you? Hey, Jamie Palmer. Glad that you're here. Barbara, good to see you. My notification worked? Well, wow. It only took a couple of years. Hang in there. There's nothing but good stuff. See if that's from here. Ashley G, good to see you. Johnny Scoville, what'd you do today?
Well, yeah, cool. Good. Settle down. We meet out of nowhere. He says, "I'm a recovering heroin addict." I believe it. Immediately, our realtor said, "I need you." It was amazing. So I said, "Me too."
She didn't look freaked out.
Yeah. She says, "I need your help. Will you help us?" And we both were like, she didn't even finish her sentence. We both were fighting to be the first one that said, "Yeah, we'll help." So they told us about a recovery center. All right, men, all and all right, and happen the chance to help these guys. So today, I've been waiting, but it hasn't even been that long. But today we went with them. Most amazing. The center was spectacular.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man.
Not what we expected.
Not at all. But there were 30 people, 32 men today. And they gave us a tour of the place. It was unbelievable. Thank you, Gary and David, who runs the center. It was unbelievable. But at one point, I'll turn over him in a minute. They met one area where they all create like it's like an outdoor
small.
Tommy gave some about how he got clean from heroin, and then I did. Pastor David to the center, talked for a few minutes, and they sang a few songs, and out of nowhere, we hear this man. He was standing up, and he went to the ground. And I mean, I've never heard groaning, and just physical. It was emotional agony. You couldn't not hear it. I mean, you really couldn't. We went over. We found out this man. I'm not going to name him, but his brother died in prison a few days ago, and he's in day 4 of kicking dope, which is a rough day. And I'm telling you, the minute he went down, he looks at me and goes, "That's got to be day 3 or 4." I swear to you, he said it. So we found out that his brother had died recently. So Tommy and I went over to him, and right as we're approaching, he vomits on the ground right in front of Tommy. And he was on the ground, and Tommy basically lifted him up, all right, and stood in front of him. And this, when you're a junkie, and that's what I was. I'm not calling them. That's what I was. You're not clean, and he was concerned about that. Tommy grabbed him. This guy hugged Tommy like a little kid that had a nightmare. I was so proud of you. I couldn't. It was one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen. We had a translator there. Gary translated, and told this guy we loved him. And it was day 4, and Tommy said, "Listen, tomorrow's better." And what happened was, this was all about giving hope. The center is called "Jesus is Our Hope," and it was just the most amazing thing. And listen, I've done some really neat things, and I've done I ran a marathon for an orphanage in Siberia. That was unbelievable. I have never, ever had a moment like this. When I tell you that he hugged this man for 5 minutes, I mean, this man was weeping. I mean, like nothing I've ever seen in my life. And, when Tom was done, I gave him a hug, and it was just the most amazing thing. We're going back, and I'm going to let Tommy talk the rest of it. I just want to tell you, in my life, I've never been more proud of you. And I got to think my dad's looking down saying, do right, and fear not. But it was a very, very special day. We're going back Thursday. Our intention was to come here and look at the water and kind of wind down. And when Amy told us about the recovery center, all of a sudden we had our marching orders. And that day we sort of felt like, hey, maybe this is the reason we came here. And today at that center, at the recovery center, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And, it was really funny. I tried to go live an hour ago, and it wasn't working. And somebody in the chat said, man, this is becoming like the Dr. Phil show. I got to tell you something. I'm not talking about his channel, but mine. Listen, I'm going through it. I'm going through something, and I'm going to eat peppers, but there's a bigger mission, and everything that's ever happened in my life was for what happened today. And I'm going to let Tommy talk.
So you're going to do it tomorrow, or you're going to, come check out Chase the Heat, South America tomorrow morning. This was unbelievable. We talk a lot on here about the opposite of addiction being connection. And I remember like it was yesterday, the first time I ever went to a place for help. And it didn't take, very often the first, 200 don't take. If you're a heroin addict, it's very, very difficult. This is very different. This rehab center is in the middle of nowhere. And when I tell you it's in the middle of nowhere, there's no way to do justice to how in the middle of nowhere this is. You would drive by it 100 times before you would realize it was there. And that was by design. They can't make a phone call to have somebody come drop off dope. All of the things that happen very often at centers like this. And there's tomorrow, if you show up, Johnny has got a bunch of pictures. None of the guys are in it. We made a point to make sure that we didn't photograph any of the fellas, but it's all men. And the oldest of whom had to be in his mid 60s. The youngest of whom looked like he might've been 14. And the gentleman that Johnny was talking about, who had just lost his brother. And it was weird because I said to him, we were standing with my brother and with the pastor. And I said, got to be either 3 or 4. And the pastor said, what? I said, he's on day 3 or he's on day 4. And he said, what makes you say that? That 72 hours, it's out of your system. There's no more dope in your system. That's about how long it takes for heroin. I mean, with fentanyl, all bets are off. But with heroin, after 72 hours, there's not going to be any left in your system. That's when it really gets ugly. People don't realize this because you start getting sick at hour 8. But your body has a way of bleeding that out over 72 hours. So you're not really ever completely out of it, smack or heroin in your system until the 3rd or 4th day. And as I was walking up, one of the guys said, yeah, he's on day 4. He had just left the first 72 hours of detox. And yeah, walking up, he just vomited on the ground. And you could see he was dry heaving. And I was right back at the first rehab I ever went to. And the guy that ran it back then was a Native American cat. Didn't look Native American. Looked very, very, very pale skinned, but big, heavy set guy, had a ponytail. And I was, how much my habit was and things like that. And I could smell myself. When you're kicking heroin, there's a body odor that is just very distinctive to kicking heroin. There's not much like it. You're sweating poison out, and it's a tough smell. And he said, come here, man, give me a hug. And I said, you have no idea how bad I smell. I'm like, I don't think, I want to give you a hug right now. And he came up and grabbed me and sort of put me in a bear hug. And I remember hugging him, and just thinking, I can't believe this dude's willing to do this. And it was bizarre to be on the other end of that. And I know now that smell was not offensive to the guy that hugged me, because it sure as hell wasn't offensive to me today at all. It was just the most amazing place I've ever been. And we talk about how the opposite of addiction is connection. And I love you guys. I really do. This is my life. And coming here and talking to people and working with people that are trying to journal and people that are trying to make their life better. It's you're right. Alcohol is very similar. Yeah, the ketones from alcohol are very distinctive. And if you work with enough people in rehab, honestly, it may sound crazy, but I can usually walk up and tell you what the person's trying to get off of. But heroin is so distinctive. And everybody there, I mean, it's kind of the prevailing odor there, but you don't really notice it because there's an air of hope. I had a vision for the better part of 3 weeks because this kept getting put off. And, one thing happened to another. And today, if my tooth pain was at a 14, I was going through this. There was no way I was going to miss it. And it was not at all what I had envisioned in my head. There's a lot of bamboo. They use a lot of bamboo in the construction, but it's gorgeous. The amount of pride that these guys have put into it. And as we're going in, he said, this is going to be an artificial lake. This is where they're digging a pool. They put in a soccer, football, they call it here, but an outdoor soccer arena, very small version where these guys can actually get out and get a little bit of recreation. And it's huge. But the place where they live, it's immaculate. You've never seen any place cleaner, but it's 3 guys to a bed, which is heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching, but the brotherhood and the camaraderie, and I knew exactly what this guy was feeling. I went over while he was on the ground and I just grabbed his hands, and I had a translator there, and I said, I know you don't believe this, but tomorrow is going to be easier than today. You're at the worst of it. Tomorrow will start the process, and it's not going to be, you're not going to wake up tomorrow feeling great, but you're not going to hurt tomorrow the way you hurt today. And when I went to hug him, he was dry heaving, and stuff was still coming out of his mouth, and you could tell the embarrassment was there. If this dude threw up in my face, it wasn't going to matter. The connection, you could tell what this was doing for them. And the way he latched on to me, I told Johnny when we were leaving, it's like when squirrel gets near water, you know what I mean? Like if I'm walking with my cat and there's water running or whatever, she has a way of like becoming a part of you. And that's the way this dude held on to me. And I think Johnny probably didn't exaggerate that much. For about 5 minutes, he just sort of wept and held on to me. And we went from being these 2 gringos that were, talking with a translator from the front of the room to being guys that, maybe the stories we were telling them were true. They, first of all, we're a lot bigger than everybody. It's just one of those things because of how, we're just the nutrition, right? From when we were kids, we're huge compared to the people here. And on top of that, I would say this guy probably weighed about 110 pounds. He has not been doing a lot of eating. There has not been a whole lot of that going on. But the transformation, not just in him, but in everybody else, while they sat and listened to the stories, I made a point of making sure you could see my arms, because there's no doubt if you're a person that has been addicted to heroin, when you see my arms, I'm not blowing any sunshine your way, and I said 10 years ago I would have been sitting with you guys on the floor. It's strange when you see somebody that's already recovered. Right toward the end of the day, a truck pulled in and it had a big emblem on the side of it. It made it look like it was almost police. As it turns out, it was a security vehicle. This guy works security probably for a restaurant or for a big company, but a very very cool looking truck, something out of a movie, right? Big, huge emblem on the side. And a big burly dude came out who was barrel chested. He looked to be in fantastic shape. And he came up and was hugging everybody and giving everybody handshakes. And when they came up to introduce him, they said, he graduated the program 5 years ago. And the lump in your throat, this was a guy who looked like everybody who was sitting in the chairs listening to us 5 years ago. And boy, he's been eating well since. He was twice the size of every guy there. But as it came time for us to get ready to leave, these guys came up and every single to a person, every guy came up to say thank you and remembered our names, right? Knew which one was which. And the guy that I kind of latched onto and was able to hug on the way home. The gentleman who drove us there said, these guys, for the most part, they have zero support. In theory, your family is paying for you to go to this. But most of these people, their families gave up on them a long time ago. And that's kind of the reality of addiction, in any place in the world. But in a place where they're just not financially able to take care of themselves a lot of time. But the shock, I think the section, I'd start talking about my testimony and I say, how I got sober, and that I had a $700 a day heroin habit. It's something that I just say because that's what I was doing. I was doing, $700 a day was what my habit was at the end. That's the living wage and $150, right? Monthly. The living wage here works out to be about $586. Now, I know that sounds like, oh my God, the entire place is in poverty. They're not. Money is there's an exchange rate of about 14 to 1. So if you're making, $600 or $700 a month, you can actually pay for an apartment. You can, drive. You can live very much like you would a middle class in the U.S. But for the look on their faces when they heard $700 a day, the amount of money that I was putting in my arm, and it's embarrassing because I think to myself, you realize what 6 years of my habit could have done for this place? 1 year's worth of the money I stuck in my arm could have built 5 of these places. But I had the vision of these being huts, and the amount of pride. This is being built by guys who are in a lot of, in many cases, they're 2 weeks sober, right? You're not sleeping at day 14. I don't know if anybody here has kicked heroin, but you're not sleeping at 2 weeks. I mean, if you get an hour or 2 a night, it's a miracle. It's an act of God. A lot of times it can take months before your sleep cycle starts to come back at all. And then you get the chemical dreams. But these guys work in shifts. So the young man that lost his brother, there are guys who volunteer to watch him around the clock because you get sick, and you get sick out of both ends. And these guys are there to clean him up and wash him and take care of him. And it's so different than any place I've been before. There aren't orderlies taking care of patients. There are addicts taking care of addicts. And I'm telling you right now, I would bet my eyes that the success rate of this place is probably 5 to 1 what it would be anyplace else. Because being your brother's keeper creates a connection that is so much different than your insurance company paying you to go someplace and have people that sadly become jaded. It's part of the deal. If all you do is this, after the 500th person that you have to clean up, it starts to make you a little bit bitter. I'm susceptible to this. I've worked with a lot of addicts, and you find yourself sometimes without the amount of patience that you had the first time around. The first person that you worked with, when they lie to you or they relapse, you go, well, that's part of the program. I relapsed and lied to every person in my life for 3 decades. But 2 years into doing this, and you start just losing your patience. Like, God, another person lying to me. There's none of that. This place was so fantastic, and the people donate. So the floors are made of marble. They're putting just the craftsmanship. And we took some pictures. Johnny will be showing them tomorrow. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. Mouse, it's so true, man. It really is. And this was an ability to connect in a way that I promise you changed my life. I'm not joking. In so many ways. Johnny said that we came here to kind of kick back, and we also came here because our money goes a hell of a lot farther here than it goes anyplace else, and it gives you an opportunity to to live in a penthouse if you want and have a view of the ocean, and it seems a lot less important. I feel like maybe if I'm living 5 blocks away from the ocean or 6 blocks away from the ocean, there might be a little bit more to play with, because they're running water to the new facilities, and the gentleman said $40 is what it's going to cost for all of the hardware, the pipes, to get the water from where it is now over to the new place. And I was like, holy hell, I got that in my pocket. You know what I mean? Like, Johnny looked at me and was like doing the head nod, like, get the money out of your pocket. It's $40. It's a different world, and it's a fantastic thing to be in a position to to help and to do things. And we're going to at some point set up a way where people can help these guys without us being involved, like a conduit directly to the people that do this, because you know how the trolls are, right? I mean, they'll have me driving a Ferrari on your money or whatever, but we're going to figure out a way that people can take a personal interest in some of the people in this program. Like the guy that I hugged today, hearing that there is no family there to help this guy. There's no one there to, to help supply clothing or to help, with food costs or anything like that. Through the translator, I said to him, to lose a brother, especially someone that's incarcerated, I can wrap my brain around this probably better than the next guy. But he gained 2 brothers today, right? Different skin color, right? With no hair. We're the only bald people in the country. But I promise you, there will be, I can help that dude, right? That's something that I can do personally. And our goal was to go in there and I'll do the public speaking thing, right? That's what I'm good at. But next week I'm going out there to grab a shovel because to see guys that are out there on their 5th day kicking heroin, digging, I promise you my old ass can get out there with a shovel and feel pretty good about doing it. You know what I mean? It's not going to be, again, you make plans and God laughs, but this is, I've never, ever felt connection to people who were trying to change their life like I did today. It was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And as I'm standing up with this guy and I'm holding on to him, Johnny was not exaggerating. It had to be at least 5 minutes. And we kind of separated because we had, the people that brought us also brought a ton of food that they were going to feed the guys. And we wanted to get over and get that process going. The second I stepped away from this young man, a guy came running in, I mean like lightning speed, and was on his knees cleaning the vomit up off of the marble floor that these guys had just laid down. And there was no ew, it was just a labor of love to go in. And none of the guys knew this dude. The first 3 days that you're there, you're not going to be, I mean, the people that are watching him to make sure that he's not, that he doesn't thrash around and hurt himself, because the first 3 days are pretty rough. But other than that, the other 30 some odd guys there didn't know who he was, but you wouldn't have known that these guys didn't know him their entire lives. I've told the story many times on the lifeboat for if you've been around long enough. I had a friend who's he was a heroin addict. He was a business partner of mine, and he lost his sister. She was run over while riding a bike on Memorial Day weekend. And I was there when he got the phone call that told him that. And he just picked up the phone. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And the sound he made when he heard what happened to his baby sister, I said so many times on the boat, I've never, ever heard anything like that. And I promise you, I will leave the planet and never hear that again. I heard it today. The anguish that this guy was going through at the loss of his brother. And, we talk all the time on here, all the time. If you have been in active addiction for a period of time, you're using a chemical to turn off your emotions. You're using a chemical so you don't have to face the things that happen to you in your life. So you're not having to deal with anger. You're not having to deal with jealousy. You're not having to deal with sorrow. And when those emotions get turned back on, they're raw. They're right at the surface. And the smallest things can tear you in half. Things that are really big, you're not prepared for. And there's no filter. This was a man whose emotions were on display for the entire world. And I promise you, there was not even a hint of shame or any other. This was just, he was going to let this out. And it was horrific. But at the same time, it was one of the most beautiful things, because it was just nice to be able to be there at that time. There was nothing fake. There was nothing forced. I've been exactly where he was today. I've been exactly where he was, different part of the world. Their habit, which probably was pretty close to the same. I'm sure there were a lot of guys in that room today that were doing more dope daily than I was. The difference is it was probably costing them $60 instead of $700. And I was getting in a car and driving to car washes to have people come in and pick it up, where in the city that they're from. And by the way, the city that they're from is 3 hours away from where the rehab is. This has been designed by people who were recovering heroin addicts. The guy that runs this program is a recovered junkie. And if I were to build a program, this is how I would build it, right? You would never build it in the city that you pick the guys up in, because on the really, really tough night, like night 4 or night 5, they're going to go over the fence. And if they got to run 10 miles right? To go find the people that they know who will take care of them, because then they're going to start stealing again or selling themselves or whatever they got to do to get the money. It's a great investment for a drug dealer. You know, you throw a junkie a couple of bags, it will pay off. You know, once you light that fire, the guy's going to continue to go and get the money and get it and get it and get it. So they had the vision to have this so far away from where these guys are from. No phone service, nobody. There are 2 cell phones at that facility, and none of them are in the hands of anybody that's in recovery. It's it really is absolutely genius how this is set up. And the vision of the guy that's running it, you know, as he's talking and saying it, right over here, he's seeing it. You know, when you watched him look around, we were trying to envision stuff that this cat's already seen. He knows exactly where this is going to be. He knows exactly where that's going to be. And tomorrow, I'm telling you, in the morning, please catch my brother, because if you're getting an idea of what this is in your head, you got to see what these guys have built. Because for the last 3 weeks, they described it to me, but we're very first world, I guess would be the way to say it. And I had a vision of this just being rough. I've been to rehabs that, you know, in fact, I've never been to a rehab that was as nice as this. I really haven't. And I went through Betty Ford. There's just a very different attitude and a different, there's a pride in this place that every single person there is a part of. Johnny Scoville, what time are you going live tomorrow?
Right after you. You go. 8, go to 9.
Yeah, about 9 o'clock on the Pacific time zone in the United States. But what a day, people. Honest to God, what a day. And it absolutely has rewired my head. This was certainly wasn't the plan when we moved to South America, you know, but this was, I got more out of this than that kid did. I promise you. Whatever I was able to do for him today, he did so much more for me. You know, you get jaded. It's just part of what happens, you know, and they're building this, they're laying concrete and they're putting a foundation down. And I said, what is this building going to be? That's where the doctor's going to be. This is the doctor that's going to be volunteering his time, because he also made the trip out there and saw what I saw. You know, and I don't know that anybody that can go out there and look at this isn't going to go, I got to be involved in this in some way. I have to be. You know, and thank God for my realtor and, you know, and the pastor at the church I'm at, because they knew, like, and we told the story here. You know, I was in the car, and you know what, people, I know I offend some when I talk about God or whatever, but I'm not Bible thumping, I promise. But when I was in the car, I don't say to people, I'm a recovering heroin addict. I've seen the look on their faces far too often to ever say out loud, I'm a recovering heroin addict, because it makes people look at you a whole lot different. So what I will usually say is I'm in recovery. And if somebody presses me on what the substance is, I'll usually say something like the morphine molecule, right? Because that could mean that I'm eating too many Vicodin, and they will look at you differently than if they think you're cooking stuff in a spoon, you know, and it's a scene out of Pulp Fiction. But she didn't even ask. I have no idea. I'm telling you the gospel truth. I have no idea why I said it. And the look on Johnny's face was, man, we haven't signed the papers, you idiot. You know, it's a condo. They could actually not want us there. You know, but we were just driving down the road, and she was asking a question about moving, and I just said, well, I'm a recovering heroin addict. And the look on her face was very similar to the look that I always see. Her eyes got this big. The only difference was, instead of the next sentence being something that was that showed terror, she just went, oh my God, I need you. Right? We need you guys. And it's you can believe anything. It won't bother me. I promise. You want to think it's a great coincidence? You can take that. It won't bother me. But whatever it is, today I was in the right place at the right time. And that so infrequently happens that it's pretty magical when it does. You know, it really is. It's pretty magical when it does. And I have a bond with this young man that I promise, with years of training in public speaking, I'm not going to be able to do any justice to explain it. I'm just not going to be able to. But there was an instant bond. When we went to feed the guys there, you know, you grab the stuff and you bring it over to them because they're sitting and listening to another speaker. And I think all of us were tripping over one another to try to get that guy food first, you know? And if he ate every single thing that we had, if the food for 32 went to him, I promise it wouldn't have been enough. This guy is really thin, frighteningly so. You know, it's an insidious drug and it's an insidious disease. But I'm never doing what I do here to try to make people feel a specific way. Believe it or not, I'm not. What I do here is honestly, I hope that what we do here is bring hope. Honestly, like the goal is to make people believe that if you take the time to write your thoughts down in a journal every single day, you will live a better life. Right? Simple stuff. Truthfully, the things that got me from where those boys were sitting today to a guy that has been sober for a decade. Because there was a time that I would have bet you my life that that was not a possibility, that I wouldn't have been able to make day 5. The reason that I had no problem today saying, I bet that's day 4 is because that was my wall for 30 years. That day where he was today, I never got by. I could get to that day and then I would go, F this. And I would go get dope. They've engineered this in a way where those guys cannot do that. And by the way, they're getting medical assisted treatment. How cool is that? There's a doctor that's coming in and giving these guys medical assisted treatment to get them through the first 72 hours. That's it. And if that's a money thing, I promise you that we're going to try to bump it out to a week, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make that happen. Because it's more important than a kick-ass view of the ocean. And I wouldn't have said that a month ago either. But I know that there are so many people that have been throwing ones up, and that can mean whatever, right? For real. It can mean you're praying. It can mean you're sending positive thoughts. It could be just pulling for you, big dog, right? Doesn't much matter. But there are so many people, and that today was what freaked out the guys there more than anything. When I said there's a group of people on YouTube that have been waiting for us to be able to come out and talk to you because they're really excited. And there's a lot of people who are just sending prayers and positive thoughts. And I swear to God, if you could have seen the look on the faces of these people. And after it was over, Gary, who's the guy that helped put this together, said that to these people, that is the biggest shock. And it shouldn't surprise me because when I was in active addiction with heroin, you believe you're the only person on the planet. Right? The opposite of addiction is connection. So when you're in active addiction, you have isolated and pulled back so far that no one on earth could possibly care about who you are. No one on earth could possibly give a crap, right? You're a guy vomiting on yourself. You can't control your bowels. You're stealing to take care of yourself, and you've probably been wearing the same clothes for a month. How could anybody care? It was a heavy day, man. It really was. It was a super heavy day. And the craziest part of this is 10 years ago, this would have been emotions that would have made me want to crawl in a spoon, you know, and stick a needle in my arm. I never would have been able to handle these kinds of emotions. And again, I would have bet my life there would never be a time where I could. But I walked away from that feeling better than I ever had. I mean that. It was today was one of the most unbelievable experiences in my life. I'm bummed out I can't go tomorrow. You know, for the time being, it's going to be a once a week kind of a thing. I guarantee you it's going to blossom into more than that. Doubling down hard now on the language thing. I want to be able to talk to these guys without a translator. It's going to mean a lot to me. You know, I wanted to be able to say, I don't give a shit that you just threw up on the ground without someone having to translate that for me. I really wanted you to just say, I don't care. He got it. I mean, there was a moment where it was really obvious that he knew exactly what I was saying. He did not want to get anything on what I was wearing. It was a hell of a day. It really was. Really a hell of a day. It's about as heavy as it could get. To paraphrase Shawshank, you had to crawl through a mile of shit and come out clean on the other side before you were ready to do this. You know what? That's a really... you did that well, Barbara, for real. And I'll tell you something. I've said, how many times have you heard me say, if you've never tried Servitude, give it a shot. I tried to explain that to the guys today. I said, you can't know how many times I put a needle in my arm. I can't. Honestly. I remember trying to figure it out once. You know, especially when you're deep into the addiction and you got to stick yourself for an hour to find the vein. You don't know how many times, but hundreds of thousands of times. Nothing. I've ever done in the drug world, and I've tried just about all of it, nothing ever felt like today. Your brain has a way of really kicking down some unbelievable buzz chemicals when you do the kind of things that that those guys are doing there for one another. Servitude is a beautiful thing. It really is, especially if you don't think you're getting anything out of it. You know, there's a reason people volunteer. There's a reason that in the civilized, I don't know what the hell you want to call it anymore. Developing nations, right? I was not from a developing nation. There's a reason that America gives more money. North America gives away more money than the rest of the world. There's a reason for that. And it's not tax write-offs or all of the things that people go, the rich just do it because it's a tax write-off. Well, there's so many other ways you can write stuff off. There's so many other ways. You can invest in businesses you know are going to fail. There are tax shelters. There's a million ways. They give because it gives you a feeling. There's a buzz in that, I promise. And I've never felt one like I did today. That's a true story. It was incredible. Of Sinner and Sage, after all you've been through recently, it's wonderful to see you smile like this. You know what? It feels pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie to you. This has really been a good one, man. Yeah, this is probably the best high of my life. And I was trying to explain that to the fellas today. I said, with all the times that I have stuck needles in my arms and done things to try to take away emotions or to make me feel a particular kind of way, coming and doing and talking to people and trying to help people not stumble into the same paths that I stumbled into, that's the best buzz I've ever felt. These men, I'm assuming, don't have access to synthetics. If not, and you could open up your own clinic, which method would you implement? If I could do medical assisted treatment, Sublocade, like if money was not an option, I would probably want to do Sublocade. Suboxone is a fantastic drug. Buprenorphine is great, but you have to take it every day. And when you put that under your tongue every single day, it's a ritual. And it's a ritual very similar to any other drug ritual, which what I mean by that is at least once a day, you're reminded that you have a drug problem. Even if you're 5 years clean, at least once a day, you have to go, oh yeah, you know. And the longer that you're on it, there are times that you'll forget to take it. 5 or 6 o'clock at night will roll around and you'll go, holy crap, I didn't take, my Suboxone today. That used to happen to me all the time. Sublocade's great because you forget completely that you ever had a drug problem. It's like the alarm on your phone goes off and you're like, holy crap, it's been a month. And you go in and you get a shot in your stomach and it bleeds out. It's buprenorphine, it's the same thing, but it bleeds out over the course of a month. If I were able to pull it off, that would be absolutely the best case scenario. But I'm very willing to admit that I'm not as smart as I often give myself credit for. And perhaps medical assisted treatment for the first 3 days, I was a very spoiled and entitled drug addict. And I don't think the people here are the same way. And I think that if I had been able to go to a rehab where I didn't have a phone, like I was telling one of the gentlemen there that was acting as a translator for us, I went to a rehab that was almost $2,000 a day, and it was paid for by one of the people that I worked as a public speaker for. And when I didn't want to be there, but if I was going to keep my job, I had to go. And they said, your people, right, can send you in things like toiletries or whatever. And the guy that I was just telling you the story about earlier, who lost his sister on Memorial Day, sent me Suave shampoo and conditioner, and it was packed with dope, right? As shampoo bottles full of dope. I didn't want to get sober, I didn't. The guys that were here today want to get sober, every one of them. And when I bag on 12-step programs, I'm not bagging on the 12 steps. I'm bagging on the fact that the court systems force people into meetings that don't want to be there. And it takes one jackwagon in a room full of people that really want to get sober. One guy can ruin it. And unfortunately, in the US, there'll be a 50-50 split of people that chose to go there and people who are court ordered. And you know what? There are people who are court ordered and they get in there and go, wow, a light bulb goes off and it changes their life. But that is not the rule. That is definitely the exception. I'm always lurking and watching your videos. And out of all of them, this was the very best one. I think you're right. This is God's mission for you both. Can't wait to see more. Bless you both. Let's live there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I really do. And you know what? I'd like to believe that we're a very mature audience. I mean it. I have no problem with people who do not believe anything. I have no problem with people who believe that, the path is a different path than the one I walk. I'm never going to shove my religion down anybody's throat. But I'd be a pretty disingenuous cat if I denied it. You know what I mean? And I feel blessed to be where I'm at today because it's just been a series of miracles that land me where I'm at, for real. I shouldn't be alive. I shouldn't. I mean, there's the amount of dope I've done. And the other thing is I shouldn't be able to carry on a conversation. I have one friend left. The rest of them have all overdosed and died. And the reason is heroin went away in the United States and it was replaced by nitazines and fentanyl, right? We've talked about this a lot on the boat, but if you grow a poppy and let's say the best possible outcome is 100. If you grow a poppy and it's 80, right? That heroin's never going to be stronger than an 80. There's nothing you can do to make it stronger than that. You can't outstrip the plant that supplied the drug, right? That's your cap. And there are places, like I did a lot of this crap in my life, and I used to get a lot of it from a place in Mexico, which is just a little south of Puerto Vallarta. And they would have 2 growing seasons a year. And one of them produced a much stronger batch of the drug than the other. You could usually tell which season you were getting. Fentanyl, that's not an issue. They can just keep making it stronger. They can go, oh, you want to make it twice as strong? We'll make it twice as strong. You want to make it 4 times as strong? We'll make it 4 times as strong. That's terrifying to me. It's terrifying. And the fact that more of the dope that's on this planet right now is designed to kill you than it is to get you high. You don't have to have spent a lifetime doing dope to realize that dead customers don't buy heroin, right? Or don't buy fentanyl. If you kill your customers, they can't give you more money. So if you're bringing stuff across the border and a bunch of people are dying, logic would say, maybe we need to back off on this batch, right? Maybe cut it a little more so that we're not putting 2 milligrams in a pill. But that's not what's happening. They're upping it. They're upping it. They're upping it. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's getting to the point where about 6 out of 10 of these pills will take you off the planet if you do the entire thing. And people go, well, you don't have to worry about me, Tommy. I'd never, ever do an entire pill. I'm not that stupid. How do you know it's not 12 milligrams? How do you know it's not 16? How do you know you didn't get a hot spot? There's a horrific story out of Michigan where a boy is 14 years old who overdosed taking a half a pill. And when they went in and checked what this kid had in his system, that half a pill had about 30 milligrams of fentanyl in it. It really doesn't matter how you break that one up. And it's logical if you think about it. You take the drug and you put it in and you mix up a bunch of cut. You're going to get hot spots. You're going to get spots where there's a lot more concentrate right there. You're going to get pills that don't go bang. I had a video sent to me by one of you, and I won't out. But anyway, I got a video sent to me recently that in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's 50 cents for an M30. 50 cents for a fake Percocet 30. That is the most horrifying thing. I watched the video and thought, this has got to be BS. It has to be. And I started emailing people that I know that just are not ready to be out of the life. I pray for them every day, but they're just not ready to be out of the life. And one of the guys said to me, oh, no, absolutely, they're 50 cents. And he said, and if you want to buy 100 of them, you can get them knocked down to a quarter. You want to tell me that there's a profit margin in that? You want to tell me that somebody's making money selling these pills at 25 cents a piece? There's no way. It's chemical warfare at this point. It's not an accident that this is the #1 cause of death in our country. I don't know who, right? We know it's coming from China. Maybe that this is an attack on America. But the more I know about Epstein, the more I know about all of the other stories that I cover, I'm not convinced that maybe we're not just living in a time where they figure that junkies are expendable. I mean, these aren't humans, right? Just like those 1,000 victims of Epstein's, right? They came from trailer parks. They're not really, humans. They're not they're not part of that class. So they're just kind of expendable. You know, it's terrifying, but I kind of feel like that's how it is. They're getting paid by someone, says Jana Banana. Yeah, they are. They're getting paid by somebody. Yeah, there are a lot. The epidemic of this is everywhere. The new one I've heard of is a mix of a tranquilizer and heroin. They call it Skyfly, I believe. The tranquilizer is called xylazine, and it is not even intended for humans. Xylazine is actually a equine tranquilizer. It's made for horses. Back in the day, I remember people that would go and get this stuff. It was easy to go into to like veterinary supply stores and buy xylazine, and guys would do it in minuscule amounts, and you could use it to get high. One of the complaints on fentanyl and its new replacement, nitazines, which is just much cheaper to make, but one of the replacements was that the complaint is that it doesn't have legs. That's what junkies, the phrase that addicts use, no legs. And what that means is, like with heroin, if the stuff was good, you could go about 14 hours before you had the fix again, right? You would not get sick for about 14 hours off of one dose, one injection, one whatever. And that's not the case with fentanyl. It's more of an up and a down kind of a thing. And if it only lasts 3 to 4 hours, you got people that have to continually do this again and again throughout the day. So in theory, they started to add xylazine because it's not a benzo, but it's closer to a benzo than anything else. So like Klonopin, right, or Xanax or Valium, like that family of drugs. It's closer to that kind of a tranquilizer than anything else you could compare it to. But if you mix the two of them, they tend to call it trank up in the Northeast. Zombie, Z is another thing that you hear. When you see the images of people in Kensington, in the Philadelphia area, the Kensington area, you'll see people literally locked up. It looks like something out of a zombie film. They bend over at the waist, either backward or forward, and they've just nodded out on their feet. It's horrifying. It really is. It's horrifying. The other problem is that it doesn't like the subcutaneous layers of your skin. So if you get the stuff in your vein, you're all right. But if you miss, it tends to cause really horrific lesions and infections. And there's a lot of people who are getting parts of their body amputated because of this. That horse tranquilizer is the zombie drug. Supposedly you crave it as soon as you are over the trip. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, it's pretty quick. My understanding is that it is really pretty quick. Jana says they call us names like trailer trash, yet here they are constantly after our children. Yeah, it's we're in a tough spot. We're in a really tough spot, and it's almost to the point. It's very easy to become despondent to the point where you're like, you know what? There's no way to fight this, right? There's just absolutely no way to fight this, and that's not the truth. It isn't. The problem is that, in my opinion, and I'm just a recovering junkie, but in my opinion, we've been trying to fight the drug war from the supply side for a very long time. And in the United States of America, the second largest budget that we have right after the military is the war on drugs. And we don't even win battles, much less win the war. They will say, hey, we just had the biggest fentanyl seizure in history. Well, they're selling the shit at 25 cents a piece. You're not seizing enough of it, right? Basic supply and demand. If this stuff's going for 25 cents a pill, you're not catching squat. It's nice to show the big seizures with all the pills in the bags, and it looks like a football field worth of it. But trust me, the vast majority of it is getting across. And if you talk to somebody in Border Patrol, they'll tell you that if they're lucky, they're getting 20%, of what's coming across. So how do you win? Well, you don't fight it from the supply side. If you catch somebody coming across the border carrying a backpack full of drugs, the second you catch him, there'll be somebody else ready to take his spot, because one of those shipments landing on the other side will set your family up for life, literally. And if you almost can't hate the people smuggling it. All they're trying to do is provide for their family. And yeah, it's a shortcut, but it's people who are trying to make a living in countries where there's not a whole lot of hope for making a living. I'm not giving them a pass, I promise you, but you can understand it. And I promise you, no matter how many you bust, And no matter how long you lock them up, there's going to be a youngster, you know, ready to take their spot and run across the border, right? Carrying as much as they can carry. You have to attack it from the demand side. If you get people that go, I'm not buying any more of this crap, watch how fast they stop shipping it, right? Pretty basic, again, back to supply and demand. If there's nobody trying to buy your product, then you stop manufacturing it. So, you know, it seems like a war that can't be won. If you say, yeah, we can't win the war on drugs, I'm willing to concede that. I'm just going to win the battle in the war on drugs, meaning my kids aren't going to get strung out on this stuff. No matter what happens, I'm not letting my kids get strung out on this. If every single parent in North America took that tact and said, I'm not letting it be my kid, right? But we say, you know, nah, not my kid. That would never happen to my kid. If you just gritted your teeth when you said that, instead of saying it like, no, it could never be my kid. If you just went, not my kid, we might just end up winning the war on drugs. I don't know that that's ever going to happen. I really don't. So maybe you'll find yourself in a place where you might have a shot at least making a dent. You know, today it was 6 minutes of hugging somebody that I promise you hasn't been hugged in a very long time. Someone who finds themselves repulsive enough that they don't think anyone would ever want to hug them or care about them. And just the act of kindness of people learning that there are strangers in the United States that have never heard of them. They don't know their names. They just know that they're out there and that they've been praying and thinking about them and excited that my brother and I may be able to go out there and just do something to help. That was the look of shock. I can't, there's, again, trained public speaker, I can't do any justice to the look on their face when they found out that there are strangers out there that care about them. You know, when you're at I've been in that lowest point, and you can't believe that even family could care about you at that point. You know, much less a stranger. The beautiful thing about where we were today is that those guys show up and they don't know anybody there. They don't know the guy running the program. They don't know the guy who's donating the food. They don't know the guys that are nothing. But the second they walk in that gate, people start to care for them. Hope is a beautiful freaking thing, people. It really is. It's a beautiful thing. If you are struggling today, right? If you have to go and buy a drug to get through your day, or if you got to drink a fifth to get through your day, shoot us an email. For real, it's a terrible way to go through life. And I'm here to tell you that if I can get sober, anybody on planet Earth can. Believe that. It took me a long time. It really did. But I finally found somebody that was smart enough to speak a language that I could understand. Big Pharma doesn't get rich off of mentally or physically fit people. You're right. And Big Pharma is absolutely disgusting. The Sackler family, I am fairly convinced, literally are in league with Satan. It's the truth. And then the frightening thing is, I could walk out my front door right now and I could go down the street and I could buy anything at a pharmacy without a prescription that would cost probably 2 cents on the dollar of whatever it would cost you in the US. Now, you can't buy pain medication. They're a little bit, a lot of Latin American countries, you can literally buy anything. In Ecuador, it doesn't work like that. You can't buy pain medication, but I can go in and buy any antibiotic. You don't need a prescription to buy an antibiotic. And it's nothing, right? You can buy a prescription for $4. How is it in the US that prescription will cost you $400, right? Well, because it's set up in such a way to take you out. The OxyContin thing was the greatest example of that ever. The contin delivery system, right? So the Sacklers came up with MS-Contin, morphine sulfate contin. That was their original painkiller, where you took a very large amount of morphine sulfate and you gave it to somebody over the course of 8 to 10 hours. The contin was the delivery system. Morphine sulfate was the drug. They then took that because morphine sulfate, people associated that with hospice. So if you broke your leg, you didn't want to get that morphine. So you're giving that to people who are dying. I don't want any part of that. So they took the active chemicals in Percodan or Percocet, right, which was oxycodone, and they put the contin delivery system on there, and you got OxyContin. They didn't need new research, right? They already developed contin. All they were doing now is adding it to a different substance. Yet the Food and Drug Administration gives them X amount of time to recoup their money. And they were selling those pills at $1 a milligram. You were getting an 80 from a pharmacy. They were $80 a piece. These people made $13 billion off of that. And then what do they get for killing 900,000 people with this garbage? The government hit them with fines. They had to pay almost half of it back. Tell you what, crime doesn't pay. Sure as hell does if you're a sackler, right? And if you look at the people that worked at their pharmaceutical company and the people that worked at the Food and Drug Administration, the back and forth between, it was like incest. They would leave the FDA, go to work for the sacklers, leave the sacklers, go to work for the FDA. It's the most crooked and disgusting system in the world. And once they realized how out of control OxyContin was and how many people were wildly addicted to it, including yours truly, right? I was getting prescriptions for 12 OxyContin 80s a day. That was from a doctor. It wasn't a pill mill. I was going to a pain specialist, a woman, and she used to write me a prescription every single month for 12 a day. That should never have happened. Shouldn't. And I mean, you know what? I could have said, hey, I'm not doing this. I'll take my responsibility in it. But that's not that's really, really a stupid prescription to write for anybody. But once they realized that it wasn't a 4% addiction rate, that the addiction rate was climbing up to about a 20% addiction rate, they went to Congress and said, hey, we screwed this pill up. We made a huge mistake. You better not let anybody make a generic of this until we can fix it. They weren't going up there to say, hey, let us save everybody. They were working with their friends in Congress to make sure that they could be the only person to sell OxyContin for at least another 4 or 5 years. You're going to tell me they didn't know you could smoke that drug when they sold it? They didn't know you could snort that drug? They didn't know you could chip off the outside content delivery system, put it in a spoon, and all of a sudden you got 80 milligrams of Percodan that you can slam? They knew. They absolutely knew. Then they came out with a better version. So the new OxyContin, you couldn't snort it, you couldn't smoke it, and you couldn't shoot it. And then they released Percocet 30, which is an OxyContin 30, right? It's just 30 milligrams of Percocet or Percodan. They knew what they were doing. It's a sleazy, disgusting industry. Big Pharma, honest to God, I don't know how any of those people sleep at night. I guess on really expensive beds. That's how they sleep at night. In really large mansions on really expensive beds. Yeah, FDA, think about it. You eat bad, you get sick, you take our drugs. Yeah, and you know what? And the foods are going to make you spike straight up and come straight down. They're designed to do that, right? And the flavors are being designed by the same people that make your perfume. What could possibly go wrong? Personally, folks, I don't know. I feel a lot safer these days in a developing country. I'm pretty happy. I want to thank all of the people that have been pulling for us. Not to get too out there and do that woo thing, but I'm telling you, the good thoughts and the prayers, they were felt today. And if you were there, I promise you would have felt it too. My brother is going to be here tomorrow morning, and he's going to show you some photos of what they've got going on there. Don't you love that hat? I love this hat. Let's see, it's one of my new acquisitions. Love this hat. All right, people, I'm going to be back tomorrow morning, and we're going to be talking about nuts and bolts stuff about how to live a better life. The stuff that you can actually implement tomorrow, regardless of whether or not you have a drug problem, but things that you can do that got a junkie like myself sober. So come by tomorrow morning and see what we do. I will brag right now and tell you it's the coolest show on YouTube, and not because of me. Come by and see the people we got in the chat. It's a pretty wild group. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor, put a little love in your heart. Sorry if I didn't get to your comments tonight, people, but signal in a developing country, you got to keep talking before the thing goes out. You feel me? All right, people, I will see you on the next one. God bless. Bye-bye.